Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Mastering Affinity Photo. I've been in the habit of calling the first video of any new video series Quick Start because it's meant to get you started using the application as quickly as possible. As far as Affinity Photo is concerned, it's a super in-depth program. There's really a lot you could do with this application. So this isn't so much a quick start video as it is an overview video, but hopefully what I tell you in this video will help you explore Affinity Photo on your own and get you headed in the right direction. Now, real quick, for those of you that don't know who I am, my name's Anthony Morganti. I started making photography how-to videos on YouTube about 5 years ago, and mainly I did it through my original website, anthonymorganti.com. I've upgraded that website to onlinephotographytraining.com, and all the videos will be found over there, and there'll be links to that website in the description below this video. I am not employed by the company that makes Affinity Photo, Serif. They're not paying me to do this video, and I'm not an affiliate for them. All my videos are free, whether or not I'm an affiliate or not. What I do ask is if you do like any of the videos I do make, that you show your support. You make donations available again through my webpage. There'll be links below. Also, you could buy any of the products I do sell in my marketplace, and again, there'll be links below. But just wanted to get that out there that I have no affiliation with Affinity Photo or Serif Corporation. So you're going to hear some opinions here and there about how the program might operate and what it might be lacking, or what it really excels at, and take it for what it's worth. Now, let's get started. When you open up Affinity Pro or Affinity Photo, you'll be taken to this screen, and usually you want to open up an image first. One thing I should add, those of you that are familiar with Lightroom and Photoshop, Affinity Photo is very similar to Photoshop. It has an Adobe Camera Raw-like element. And let's close this down first. And what Affinity calls it are personas. So over here in the left-hand corner, you'll see right here we have the photo persona. This is kind of like Photoshop. So you could do a lot of different Photoshop type things in the photo persona. Next to that is the liquefy persona, and again, that's Photoshop. That's something that's found in Photoshop. Next to that is the develop persona. That's like the develop module of Lightroom. Whenever you open a raw file in Affinity Photo, it will automatically open in the develop persona. All other image files will open up in the photo persona. So just keep that in mind. And we're going to do this demonstration with a raw file. So we're going to start out in the develop persona, and when we're done there, we'll open it up into the photo persona. Now, next to that, we have the tone mapping persona. That's HDR images. And next to that, we have the export persona. And that is, of course, to export your images. And you may notice whenever I hover over anything, you get a little tooltip there, and it helps you better understand what that icon does. So we want to open an image. I mentioned we're going to open a raw file. So we're going to go up to the top File menu, and we're going to go down to Open. And I have a Nikon raw file here. And as a matter of fact, this was shot with a Nikon D850, so it's a very large raw file. And I chose this on purpose because I think it's about the largest DSL raw file out right now. And I want you to see how long it takes to open in the develop persona. So we're going to just click open, and you'll get a, like no indication that it's doing anything at first. It's just kind of sitting there, and you're kind of wondering what's going on. But just wait, and eventually you'll find it opens up. And you may not have noticed, but we are in the develop persona right now. And you can move the image around, and you could resize the image in your screen by hitting, if you have a Mac, Command minus to make it smaller. If you have a PC, it's Control minus, and Command plus to make it bigger, or Control plus. On some PCs and Apple computers, the plus sign is shared by the equal sign, so you're actually hitting Command equal. All right, Command or Control minus or plus, and you could resize it. Hit Command 0 and you'll fit it to screen. Control 0 also will fit it to screen on a Windows computer. So we have this open in the Develop persona. What are we going to do? Well, over on the right-hand panel, we have all the different applications or tools that we could use on this image. You can see there's tabs going across the top. Right now we're in the Basic tab. And in the Basic tab, we could control exposure. We could enhance contrast, clarity, saturation, and vibrance. We also have white balance, sharpening, and shadows and highlights, and profiles. Next to that, we have lens corrections, and there's no automatic lens corrections. So those of you familiar with Photoshop's Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom, there's not really just a checkbox you could check and it will automatically do lens corrections. You have to manually move the sliders. Next to that is sharpening and noise reduction in the Details tab. Next to that, in the Tones tab, we have curves, which is like the tone curve in Lightroom or curves in Photoshop. Convert to black and white with this black and white tab right there. And split toning, where you could tone the shadows one color and tone the highlights a different color. Then finally at the end we have overlays, and we'll talk about overlays in a future video. We're going to start out, of course, in the Basic tab. I should say over here on the left we have some tools. You have the crop tool, some blemish removal tool, and you can just hover over them again, red eye removal tool, and get a little tooltip telling you what those tools do. All right, now I'm going to jump down to shadows and highlights. You can see I underexposed the image quite a bit here. I didn't want the sky to get blown out, so it's the dark parts are pretty dark. So I'm going to open up the shadows by moving the shadow slider to the right. And you can see it kind of looks lousy, but that's all right. And then we'll go and I'm going to add some saturation to the right. So we'll make it a little more saturated. We're going to add a bit of clarity. And we're going to add a bit of contrast to the image, just a little. I've noticed the sliders seem to have a great effect on the image compared to some other application I've used. It seems like in Lightroom you have to move the sliders a lot more to get the same effect that you're getting here, moving the sliders just a little bit. Now we go up to the exposure, black point, brightness. I kind of started from the bottom and worked up. You could do it in any order you want. You don't have to start with the Basic tab either. You could start wherever you want. I'm just going to make the image a little brighter overall. You could also do exposure. It does something similar. If you want to reset any single slider, just double click on the slider and you'll reset that slider to its default position. If you want to reset the whole little tab here, you could hit this little backwards arrow and that will reset the whole tab. So if you bring exposure up, you can see it does something similar to brightness. Move black point around, see if it affects anything you like. And I'd say I'm done with this Basic tab. I'm not going to do any lens corrections, even though it probably does need it. It was shot with a wide angle lens, but again, there's no auto lens corrections. You have to do it manually. One thing I've noticed, I'm not going to do it because it'll make the video long. If I click chromatic aberration reduction, it takes quite a while to do. So those of you used to Lightroom or on OnePhoto Raw, when you click it, it's almost instantaneous. Here, it's going to take probably about 10 to 20 seconds. And I'm using about a 3-year-old iMac, and I got 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I have whatever processor they sold 3 years ago was the fastest one. So it's still a pretty relevant computer, and it's relatively quick. This goes just a little slow. If you have fringing on edges and stuff, you could click defringe. Lens vignettes, again, this is all manual. Nothing is automatic on this. The chromatic aberration, I don't want to click it. I can't remember actually how automatic that is, but we'll cover that. Well, I'm going to click it. There, you can see it is automatic and it's going up here, and it's going to take a while. And while it does it, you can't do anything else. So you can't go to another tab or do anything else. So we have to wait for it because I just couldn't stand it. I had to click it. So once it's done, there, it was done. And You can click, I get that spinning wheel of death, so I unclicked it. We go to details. And this again is sharpening and noise reduction. And I suggest you zoom in when you do sharpening and noise reduction. So since I have a Mac, I'm going to hit Command equals, technically, Command plus. If you have a PC, hit Control plus. So we'll zoom in and we'll drag over to a place. Now it was shot at ISO 64, so there really isn't a lot of noise in here. And you could remove luminance noise and colors noise, color noise. There, right now, like I said, there isn't much. So we're going to do some sharpening to the image, and I could definitely see it sharpen the buildings. I'm going to hit Command 0 to fit it to screen. Hit Control 0 on a PC. We'll go to tones. I'm not going to do much here. I'm going to save that and do that in the photo persona. When we get to that, we're not going to do any overlays. So I'd say I'm done in this develop persona. So when you're done, go up here in the top left-hand corner and click right there where it says develop. And you can see it immediately opened in the photos persona. Now, first of all, over on the left, we have this macro panel. That is similar to Photoshop Actions. So if you're familiar with that, that's what these macros do. If you want to get this panel out of the way, because it's just kind of bugging you, you could do that very easily. Go up to, if I remember right, go up to View, then we go to Studio, and then we go to Macro right there where it's checked. Just uncheck that, and we got rid of that. Now we have this library. So if we go up to View, and we go to Studio, and we go to Library, we uncheck that as well. So it gives us a little more room to process our image. Now, similar to the develop persona, the photo persona has tools along the left-hand side. Again, you could hover over those. There's some duplicate tools there. For instance, there's a crop tool in both the develop and photo persona, and a couple others. But over here, the tools seem to be a little more powerful, is what I've found. Now, if you're familiar with Photoshop, you'll do very well in the photo persona because it's very similar. You can see over here, right here, we have these tabs and we're in layers. So we're going to be doing layers, layer adjustments to our image. And the first thing we want to do is to kind of jazz up the image a little bit. So we want to do an adjustment layer. And one way you could fetch an adjustment layer is click on this adjustment tab, and you can see all these different adjustment layers. And I'm going to click levels because levels usually will add a lot of pop to your image, and it's very easy to do. You can see in the levels dialog that there's really three sliders: black level, white level, and gamma. What you'd often like to do is it shows you the histogram, and you'd like to bring these lines into the edge of where the histogram ends and the edge where the histogram starts. Now you can see on the left here, it's already right where it starts. So we really have to just worry about the right-hand side. And the right-hand side is the white level. So we'll go to the white level slider, and as I move that, you can see that line is moving. I move it right to where it starts. And you can see how that really added quite a bit of pop to the image. And if you wanted to do black level as well, you can move that. Then the gamma adjustment, you could move that and just see if you could enhance your image, add a little bit of more contrast to the image with that slider as well. So we added levels. The next thing I think I'd like to do is I'd like to do something with white balance. I want to warm it up a little bit. So I'm going to click this white balance adjustment layer. And I'm going to go and I'm going to move this white balance slider to the right just to warm it up a touch, and maybe tint to the right just a little bit too, and close that down. Now, as I added these adjustment layers, if we go over to the layers tab, you can see we have them. We have the background layer. They call it a pixel layer because that's our actual picture. Then we have levels adjustment and white balance adjustment. Now we'll go back up to adjustments and see what else we could do. I think we're kind of done. I think that's good for this video. Kind of gives you an idea what these layers do, but I do want to do a couple other things. As I look at the image, you can see it's a little bit dark right in here compared to the rest of the image. Obviously, there was probably a cloud and it hit right there. so it's kind of dark. So I'm just going to go to brightness contrast, and I'm going to turn brightness up. Now it's going to affect the entire image, obviously. That's okay. We'll close that down for a minute. Now, with Photoshop, I'll go back to the Layers tab. With Photoshop, you're probably familiar with layer masks, and they're available here. You can see down here there's a mask. But the cool thing about Affinity Photo is you don't need to use a layer mask on an adjustment layer. It kind of already has a mask built in. So what I want to do is I just want this brightness contrast adjustment that I just did. I just want it applied right here. I don't want it applied anywhere else. So I could come in and paint out the adjustment everywhere else, but I think the easiest way, which will require less painting, is to invert this brightness contrast adjustment. And to do that, I'm going to hit Command I. That's because I have a Mac. You hit Control I if you have a PC. Now you can see it kind of remove the adjustment, and if I click this checkbox, you can see nothing's happening. But now I want to paint in the adjustment. So just make sure that you're clicked on the layer you're working with, and you want to get a brush. The keyboard shortcut for the brush tool is B, and the brush tool's right here. And if you click with your left mouse button and hold in, you'll notice there's actually 3 tools in this little tool cubby. Make sure you're using the paintbrush tool. Now we want to paint in white. White's going to reveal, black hides. Now what we do is go over here and look at these color swatches, and you can see we have histogram color and swatches. So just go on color, and we want this white one to be the foreground color. Hit the X key on your keyboard and you can see it made white the foreground color. Now we have brush attributes up here, and I think I want the hardness to be a little less. So I want a relatively soft brush, maybe around 25% hardness in there somewhere. Also, you could change the size of your brush with your bracket keys. The right bracket key will make it larger, the left bracket key will make it smaller. Now you'll notice when I hover the brush, you're kind of getting a preview what you're going to do. You can see I'm lightening this. So I'm going to come in here and lighten this. Now I kind of made a mistake. I kind of went up in this building, and maybe I don't want to brighten these trees. So all I need to do is paint with black. So I'm going to invert or change or flip-flop the white and the black by hitting the X key again. Now you can see I've got that preview. It's showing it's dark. So I'll come in here and paint out the adjustment there. Now if I find that I need to readjust this, double click on the actual adjustment layer, and you can see I could come in and readjust it all I want. Maybe add a little contrast. I think that looks a little better. Now we're done. Now, oh, you know what? Why don't we add a vignette? And to add a vignette, make sure you're on the pixel layer, the actual image. We're adding the vignette to the image, not to the adjustment. So we're going to click on this layer, the pixel layer, and we're going to go up to Layer, and then we're going to go down to New Live Filter Layer, and then we're going to go down to Vignette Filter. We're going to click there, and you can see our live vignette dialog box pops up. And we're going to bring exposure down. I like a darker vignette, so I'm moving the slider to the left. If I wanted a white vignette, I'd move it to the right. But I want a dark one, so I'm going to move it down. And you can see it's very obvious right now. And I want to make it softer because that edge is a little bit too hard. So I'm going to move this to the left, and you can see it really softened it, but it's encroached too much into the center. So I'm going to take scale, and I'm going to scale it back a little bit. And then we could turn it off and on to test it. There's on, off. Make it a little bit harder. And you could adjust the shape as well from round to square with that bottom slider. But I kind of like the way it is. I just usually like subtle vignettes. I don't like anything too obvious. And there's before, and there's after. A vignette helps draw the viewer's attention more towards the middle of your scene. Okay, now I'm done. So 2 things. you could save this, and I recommend you do, save it as an Affinity Photo image, and also export it as something that you could share online. So I'm going to save it as an Affinity Photo image first. So I'm just going to click on File, Save. And it's going to give it the suffix AF photo, so .AF photo, and I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to leave the original file name and click Save. So it's saving this photo, and you can see that there's a progress bar going along the top. It takes a little while to save this. Now, once it saves, we want to share this image somewhere. We're usually going to export it as a JPEG. So we're going to go up to File and get down to Export. And the Export dialog pops up, and you can see we could say PNG, JPEG, GIF, TIFF, PSD, PDF, SVG, EPS, EXR, and an HDR image. So we're going to go with a JPEG, and I'm going to go with a quality of 80, make it a little smaller, and I'm not going to go with the full size. So I want to keep the original 3:2 dimensions, so we keep this padlock locked. If I click on it, it unlocks it, and we could resize the image. The horizontal resolution of the image independently of the vertical resolution of the image. But I want to keep it clicked so that they both get adjusted together. And I'm going to do 2048. That's usually a good size for, let's say, Facebook. And you can see as soon as I changed that horizontal size, the vertical size changed as well. We have different samplings you could do. I'm just going to go with the default bilinear. We're going to do the whole document. All right. And we're just going to click Export. All right. And then we're going to come up, where do we want to save it? And we're going to call this Cityscape. Oops. Cityscape. There we go. And we'll save it on our desktop. And that will save relatively quickly, and it's done. So we're going to close down Affinity Photo. I'm just going to hit Command Q because I have a Mac. If you have a PC, you'd have to go up and close it like you would on a PC, any application on a PC. And you can see there is our Cityscape JPEG right there. That's the image we just created. And we have the Affinity Photo version of the image. Here's the original RAW file. The original RAW file, Affinity Photo, is a non-destructive RAW editor, so nothing got done to the original RAW file. And if I open that up in Affinity Photo, you'd see that that is the original RAW file with no processing done to it. This AF photo is the actual image that has all the processing done to it. And if I open this again, just by double clicking on it, we'll open it up in Affinity Photo. And when I do, we'll close that, you can see all our layers are there. So that's it. That's a quick start on Affinity Photo. I'm sorry I talked so much and gave so much background information, but the subsequent videos after this one should be a little more concise and a lot shorter. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.